Hi guys, this is Vinod Kumar. Hope you all are doing good. So in today's session, I am going to demonstrate how to work with Azure Functions using PowerShell in Visual Studio Code. So we all know that PowerShell is a great language for automating tasks, and now with the support in Azure Functions, you can operate different operational tasks and take advantage of using the native Azure integration to modernize the deliveries and maintaining these services. What all the benefits that we are going to get when we are using Azure functions using this PowerShell? So we all know that the Azure has a very strong built-in login mechanism. They have uh, different multiple plans for the app services. They have a support for different hybrid environments, and they also support the development from the different IDEs like the Visual Code or Visual Studio. We can all take advantages of all these features by using the PowerShell in Azure Function. So let me share my desk. Okay, so what are the prerequisites that we need to have in our machine to work with Visual Studio Code and Azure Functions? So we need to have a Visual Studio already installed, and we need to add the extension called PowerShell extension to develop the PowerShell script in our Visual Studio. Then we need to have Azure Functions extension in Visual Studio Code to create Azure Functions. Then for doing a local testing, you need to have this Azure Functions core tool. You can install it by using the command called npm install Azure Functions hyphen core tools. This 3 is the version that you can provide. So I will just open up my Visual Code. So you can see my Visual Code, and you can add the extensions from here, which is PowerShell extension. So I have already installed it. So you are seeing the message called uninstall. Then you need to install Azure Function extension. So this is that one. So I have installed the latest version, which is the version 1.3.0. Then for local development, you need to install this Azure Functions core tool, which I already installed with the version 3. I have ran the command npm install Azure Function core tool. So let's start with the development of the project. So you can create it directly from here. Go to Azure. You need to create a new project. So this will ask you for a path. For now, I'm just selecting desktop. Then it will ask you for the language that you want to choose. We can choose PowerShell. Then it will ask you for the type of trigger that you want to use with your Azure function. So I am choosing HTTP trigger, then I can give a name. I'm giving PowerShell testing. Then the authorization level, you can choose function, anonymous, or admin. Uh, if you choose function, you need to give a valid key while calling this HTTP request. So for now, I'm just taking it as anonymous, and you can choose open in current window. So you can see a message called connecting to PowerShell gallery successfully retrieved AZ information. And this has created me my first function called PowerShell testing. And it has the files function.js, run.js, and requirement.psds1. Then it has included some sample data. It is connected with Git, so it has a git ignore file. So when you look at the run.ps1 file, you can see the basic code, boiler code that the Microsoft has provided. Again, this is just, it just takes a parameter called query parameter name, and it is displaying it in the response. So how can we run this? We just need to hit F5, which will start our host, and you will see the Azure function core tool has been initiated, and the version, you can see the latest version, which is 3.0. So it is still running. So once you get this message called functions, once you get the message called worker process started, you will see a list of functions that you have in your functional development. You can take this URL and test it by using Postman. So in the Postman, I have selected the request to be of type post, and I'm passing the variable name to be I am in Azure, and I'm sending the request. So once I send the request, you can see the message called hello, I am in Azure. This HTTP request function successfully executed. We are getting this message from this code. Here it is. If we are passing anything in the parameter, it will send us the message hello with the name that has given in the JSON, and the message this HTTP function successfully executed. And you can see the logs here as well, like executing the function, which function we are calling, and if you have written any information, then something like if you write uh, if you want to write something on the console window, you can use the write host command in the PowerShell. So we have this. So the where we have written the PowerShell HTTP trigger function processed a request. That message we are seeing it in the log screen, and finally executed this. So along the same line, if you want to read some config file, environmental variables from the config files, the file will be for local development, it will be local.settings.json, where you can add your environmental variables, something like SQL, database, connection, and you can give the connection name here. I'm just giving it a sample value connection string value, which you can read it from the run.ps1 file. So for that, you just need to write env dot the key value in the local dot settings file. So this is how you can store it to a variable, or I'm just pasting it on the console so that you will be able to see it. So I just saved it. I'm just restarting the function app. So you see that message that the worker process has been started. So now you can send the your HTTP request. So I'm just changing the name to some, and sending the request again. So you see the message here, and in the lock screen you see the value that has been read from the local.settings.json file. So this is how you can read it from the config files as well. Now if you want to deploy this, you can just go to the extension Azure. You need to sign in to your Azure account. Where you need to give your account name. So password. Now you will see a message called you are signed in, and you can close this window. So now you can just go to your Visual Code. You will see your subscription here. Then this is for Azure Functions actually. If you see, you have the app service functions, then the storage. So you need to work on these functions. So inside functions, I don't have any function, so I can create one now. You can hit on deploy, which will ask you for create a new function app in Azure. I will choose that. Then you need to provide a global unique name for your new function. So I'm just giving it to be PowerShell UOC AZ Funk. So this has accepted that name. So I just enter here. Then it is asking for the runtime environment. Sorry. I selected that to be PowerShell 7.0. Then it is asking for the region, South India. Okay. It is asking to select the resource group, select existing. So I have this resource group which is in West US, so I'm just selecting that. So it started creating the function app in the portal, where you can see some messages like creating storage account. The storage account is something that we need while we creating the Azure function app. So it first create the storage account for us in the location South India with the SKU standard LRS. You can see messages here. Meanwhile, I will go to my Azure portal. So this is my Azure portal. Inside, I am inside my resource group called learning some GUID, where I can just refresh this. It will take 2 to 3 minutes to finish that deployment. Resource was disallowed by policy. Something is wrong. Let me try one more time. AZ PowerShell function. Then the environment, then the location. We need to select the resource group. You can see the storage account has been already created for the previous deployment. Now it started with a new storage account. Seems like this is not allowed by the policy. Okay, let me try to create a function app right from the portal itself. So I selected function app. Then I can give a function app name, which is PowerShell Azure Func. Then I can select the environment to be PowerShell core and the version is 7.1, sorry 7.0, and the region can be South India. Hosting environment as serverless. I can use the existing storage account, which is Azure PowerShell Fun. Then in monitoring, we have it disabled. Then if you want, you can add tags, or else you can just review and create. So that this will start creating my Azure function. So here I'm getting this error because of some policies, which is on my resource group, not allowing me to create the function app. They have a policy assigned and the policy name is VM assignment. So what is this VM assignment policy? Okay, this deployment is still in process. So meantime, we just check what is this policy. This is an inbuilt policy. Well, I will get back to you on this, what this policy is doing here. So you can see the deployment has been deployed and you can just go to the resource. Now, if you look at the functions, you don't have any functions, so you can deploy it from here. You can just refresh this. Here you will see your function app that has been created, and this was created from the portal. So you can just right click and deploy to this function. This will ask uh, you this will ask you for a message. Are you sure you want to deploy? Because the existing functions will be overwritten. We don't have any deployments in our function, so we can do this. I hit the deploy button, which will start my deployment. So you can see a message called deploying to the function app. This is still in process. So meanwhile, let's just create this environment variable inside our function app. I can just go to configurations and I can add this to the app settings key. So new app setting, this is my value, and I'm just giving my value to be coming from Azure, and I'm just saving it. You need to save it here as well. Continue. So this will update my web app settings, and you will see here the value, that key value that we have given. Then you need to go to overview, just see if this deployment has been completed. It's still running. So meanwhile, I'll just try to explain you the other files that we have inside our code. So this function.json file is the file that is necessary, which has the information about the type of trigger that you have used with your function and the type of authentication, then the type of trigger that you have used. We have used HTTP trigger and the type of methods that it will accept. If you use a time trigger, then the type will be time trigger and you need to pass the cron expression. So if it is a blob trigger, then you need to uh, configure the container name, then the blob name. If you want, you can. If you have input and output bindings, you can add them as well here. Then you have a sample.dat file which is used for testing. Then the other important file is requirements.psd1 file. So what this file will do is it will enable the modules that we need in while doing our scripting. Let's say if you are working with AZ module, you need to add it in this file. If you are working with some SQL modules, so you just need to add it here. So the other point we need to make sure is when you add it here in the host.json file, there is a property called manage dependency. You should enable this. So this has to be true. When this is true, then only while running the function app, your modules will be deployed, will be installed, and you don't see any error in the function app. So this function is already deployed inside the Azure functions. You can see it here, Azure functions. The function name is PowerShell testing. You can go inside this, code testing. Here you can grab the URL for your function and you can see the logs as well. So it's just loading. So here is the place where you can get your function URL and logs. You can see it here. See the code whatever we have written. You can see the code all here, and the files you can see it at the top. The function.json file, run.ps1 file, sample.dat file. So this is connected. Let's run it from the Postman. So the URL is PowerShell Azure Fun, which is our function name, followed by the default extension that is provided by the Microsoft Azure. If I hit it now, then you can see the same message here, and in the logs you can see the execution of the function, and the environmental variable we have defined is also coming up in the log screen, like coming from the Azure. This is the value that we have given in the configurations. Now if you go to the function app, you have something called app files where you can see the rest of the files. You can always edit these files going to the kudo screen. So you can see the manage dependency to be enabled and the other files as well. You can see requirements.psd1 file where you can add the modules. So if you want, you can just keep this function to be enabled like this, or else if you want, you can disable this. So right now this is to disable this, you need to use again the visual code where you just need to go to your function dot JSON file, and you need to add a key value called enabled or disabled. So for that, you can refer the Azure Microsoft documentation where Azure function.json. So this will give you a guidance like what are the keys that you can add in your function.json file. Function over understanding enable how to disable. So you can see a message called so you can add this disable to be true or false, which will disable or enable your function app. Sorry, the function in your function app. So that's all I have for you today. So thanks all for watching this video.